Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first one is titled, I want my bedroom painted blue, no matter what. Okay. This happened over a decade ago. My dad works for a government-associated oil company, and we used to live in company-provided accommodation. A lot of maintenance like plumbing, electrician, carpenters etc. was done by the company-appointed vendors, since they were on a contract. The company was up for a new painter contractor and we had a couple vendors lined up for the job. Since our house was up for a new paint job, my mum decided to let the company test one of the vendors by letting them paint in our home. We'll call him Painter X. Now Painter X wanted to impress my mum and the company, so he let us pick whatever colors we wanted for all the rooms, and so we did. White for the kitchen, eggshell for the living room, lavender for mine, and so on. The company was impressed and he was hired. Now one particular neighbor of ours, Mrs. Will Not Listen, loved our home's colors and requested for Painter X to also paint different colors for each of her rooms. Unfortunately, all homes were being painted an off-white color in all the rooms, since that was a fairly standard color everyone could work with. But Mrs. Will Not Listen demanded she gets a custom job because we did. She absolutely wanted blue in her bedroom, no matter what it took. The painter read his contract and it said all homes to be painted a single color, so he did what he could to give the lady blue in her bedroom. He painted the whole home blue, including the bathrooms, kitchens, everything. It wasn't even a pastel blue. I'm not sure why she couldn't stop him, but her house remained that way for another 5 years, before the apartments were up for a touch-up, as per the contract. The next one is titled, You're Going to Be a Piece of Crap? Well then, meet my friend the Major. This is something that happened to my dad while he was doing military service approximately 20 to 21 years ago. Note that he told me this story in Norwegian, so I tried my best translating the figures of speech he used and the military ranks. Each year during Easter, all the recruits were allowed a 1-week leave to go home and see their families. If you lived far away, you could apply for 1 or 2 extra days to cover the trip, and it had to be approved by the sergeant in charge of your platoon. My dad lived really far away and applied for 4 extra days, 11 days in total, which was a lot but not unreasonable. The one that was unreasonable, however, was the sergeant in charge of my dad's platoon. He would frequently yell and be an overall dickhead. So when my dad sent in his application with a detailed explanation of why he needed the extra days, the sergeant just saw that he wanted extra days and denied it, shouting at my dad and calling him lazy and incompetent. There wasn't much my dad could do at this point except nod and walk away. During dinner, the army priest came up to my dad and asked him why he was so gloomy. My dad explained what had happened and the priest simply said that he would see if there was anything he could do. Later that same day, he got a message that he was summoned to the officers' building to meet with the major. No recruit is allowed inside the officers' building unless summoned. My dad got ready and on his way to meet with the major saw his platoon getting ready for a field exercise and said that he was going to see the major. No explanation on why got summoned. When he met with the major, described as a nice and slightly overweight man, somewhat akin to Major N from 91, and, for those of you familiar with it, and had told him what had happened and how the sergeant wouldn't even give his request as much as a second thought. The major said, of course you should get those extra days, and then sent my dad off to tell Sergeant Dickhead that the major approved his request. On his way back, he once again met with his platoon and got informed that they couldn't wait much longer and were going to leave without him if he didn't get ready soon. My dad said that he would get ready as fast as possible. When meeting up with the sergeant for the second time and saying that he had met with the major, not saying that he got summoned after talking to the army priest, the sergeant got furious and accused him of lying, as my dad couldn't possibly have walking into the major's office without being summoned, and told him to duck off. My dad, being the dutiful man that he is, obliged and ducked off. He decided that he needed to talk to the major once again, and when he met his platoon for the 3rd time, some of them started to suspect that he personally knew the major. He was also told that they would be leaving without him as they couldn't afford to waste any more time. My dad met the major at the entrance of the officers' building and said what had just happened. The major simply smiled and said that he would take care of it, so he went to a phone booth and called up the sergeant. As previously explained, the major was nice and he always had a smile and spoke in a friendly tone, but he could also be quite stern if needed to. But what my dad never expected was to hear the major shout on top of his lungs, cursing and telling the sergeant to stop being a piece of crap and sign the papers. The major then came out of the phone booth, same smile and in the same friendly voice said, "You can go now, I think he signed the papers now." When my dad met up with the sergeant for the third time, the sergeant sat in his chair, looking down at his desk with a gloomy look on his face and said in a really low tone of voice, "Give me the application." My dad followed orders once again and the sergeant signed it without even looking at it and then mumbled something about how my dad could have told him about his situation even though it was written when he first applied. He never looked up during the whole conversation. The sergeant didn't yell as much at my dad afterwards, most likely in fear of facing the major's wrath. Moral of the story: if you do exactly as you are told, you'll get your requests approved. You don't have to go on a 2-day field exercise. You make people think you personally know the major and you get to see a piece of crap sergeant getting put his place. Note: yes, my dad left out some important information when talking to the sergeant, mainly that he got summoned by the major because he has spoken with the army priest, but as my dad put it, I did as I was told. Also, he had it coming. The next one is titled, "You should ask questions before you assume." Me, a somewhat new guy, several years in the telecom industry, working with a bitter old telecom guy. Guy is berating me pretty much non-stop, can't be pleased. So, I have a job running a bunch of fiber optic cables. We have to unroll them on the floor, taking care not to step on them or bend them too much. Once run out on the floor, we place a tag on each end that identifies the fiber and its intended use and connection point. I have like 60 of these to do, 30 transmit fibers and 30 receive fibers, about 120 long each. So, I'm rolling them out and tagging. Get half of them done. The old guy comes up, grabs the bundle, and starts running them in. So, I stop what I'm doing, grab a ladder and help. About 45 minutes later, we are done running them in. He climbs down off the ladder, kinda like dry washes his hands in a show of a job well done, then looks over and sees the other group of fiber optic cables that I hadn't run out and tagged yet. "Where are those going?" I reply, "The same place we just ran those." "Why didn't you say something when I was running those others?" "You didn't ask." Same guy, different job. He is wanting a promotion, so he asks the boss to run a job that he really isn't qualified for. He worked mostly in electronic switching, I worked mostly in DC power. He wants to run a power job. So, they let him. We, the power group, are a bunch of pretty much construction workers. The cable we run by hand weighs 3 pounds per foot, is very hard to bend, and we have to lace it, sew it, to the cable racks. Hard work, all of it. Our job is to run 36 of these cables from the 3rd floor of the building equipment room to the basement power plant. Runs are 300+ long. So, we start. The guy wanting a promotion gets to work the reel. He can control how fast or how slow the run goes. We all get spread out along the run, and start pulling. Naturally, we are all yelling back and forth. Slack. I need cable. Pull, damn it. So and so forth. He gets tired of us yelling, so he says, "I don't want to hear another damn word. You guys need to just shut up and pull." So, that is exactly what we do. When the cable got to the basement, where it was supposed to go, we continued to pull. Until we pulled every damn foot of the cable off the reel and coiled it up on the basement floor. All the while he starts yelling about he is running out of cable on the reel. He comes down to the basement, furious. "What the duck? Why didn't you guys tell me to stop? You told us to shut up and be quiet." He didn't get the promotion and he never asked to work power again. The next one is titled, "Biggest Payday of My Life for 2 minutes of work." Another tech story. I'm a contractor at a big bank in New York City. No benefits, but I'm paid by the hour. I like the people I work for, and while I realize I get paid well, I try to make sure they get their money's worth. On the Friday before last, start to the 3-day weekend, I was told by one of the managers, mine is out on vacation, that one of my applications was malfunctioning in production and that it absolutely needed to be fixed pronto. This application was tested to a crazy degree, so the first thing I did was call up the server admin and ask what was different between our test and production systems. After some prodding, I figure out that the production system consists of 2 clustered servers whereas the test server is all on its own. On the theory that the data isn't transferring between the paired servers fast enough for the next web page to be rendered, it's a survey application where the answer to one question determines the next question to be asked. I suggest checking the sticky bit, which would ensure that when a person uses the application, they will stick to one server to eliminate the data transfer problem. The admin, who's a friend of mine, tells me she can't make that change without her department's manager's approval, a kind of know-it-all guy. Fine. I tell my substitute manager what I think the problem is, thinking he'll go to bat for me, and instead, he tells me to stay as long as it takes, including giving up my weekend to ensure it's working, and he tells me I'll have to work it out with the department manager for the server group. Long story only slightly shorter, that guy proceeds to make my and his 2 employees' lives miserable all weekend. I keep suggesting the sticky bit, he keeps telling me there's no way that's it, and suggests dumb strategy after dumb strategy. I keep telling my substitute manager what's happening, he keeps telling me to work it out, and stay as long as I need to. Finally, late on Columbus Day, my admin friend says, I'm just going to try your idea without telling him. Fixes the problem, less than 2 minutes effort. When my manager got back from vacation last week, he called me over to his desk. He had just gotten the bill from the contracting firm. He seemed upset. I had billed for 3 extra 8-hour days. Him, I just have one question, where did you sleep? On the couch in the waiting room. Him, okay. Thanks. Earlier today, my manager came over with an envelope and when he handed it to me he said, I'd tell you to thank substitute manager and server group manager for this, but since it came out of their budgets, maybe best not to. Don't spend it all in one place. Check was for my regular pay plus, almost $18,000. My manager socked their budgets for time and a half from the end of business of Friday to open of business on Tuesday. When I told him later that I felt bad, he said, you shouldn't, you taught them a very valuable lesson in server technology and business management that they obviously missed. Did I mention my boss used to be a programmer himself? The next one is titled, Don't Want to Listen to Me? Here, you deal with it then. I work as a waitress at a smallish restaurant. Friday nights are our busiest night, and I always work the closing shift, so I always get the same section. There's this one regular, an older woman, who comes in every Friday night and is close friends with both the general manager (GM) and the assistant manager (AM). The regular, we'll call her Ol for old lady, always requests a specific booth, all the way in the back of the restaurant. Not just requests, she demands it. Instead of making a reservation like a normal human being, she comes in on our busiest night every single week and expects to have her booth ready and waiting for her, even though we are a small restaurant and often have a wait for tables on that night. It's gotten to the point where if the host sits somebody else in that booth before Ol arrives, she will angrily berate the host and servers, and she has even threatened to stop tipping us because of it. To assuage Ol, the GM has started enforcing the rule that we keep that particular booth open around 7 p.m. every Friday, which is when Ol usually shows up. One Friday night, the restaurant is packed. A family of 5 comes in, and the only place we can seat them without making them wait is the back booth. It was nearing 7 p.m., so before the host can seat them I flag the AM over. The GM wasn't available at the moment. She talks to the hostess and decides to seat the family in the booth anyway. I calmly explain to her that this isn't a good idea, since I wasn't about to be lectured by Ol again for something that was out of my control. The AM brushed off my claims, reprimanded me for questioning her decision, and basically told me that it wasn't her problem. Again, I told her I didn't think it was a good idea, and she told me that if Ol gave me any problems about it, to tell her that she AM was the one that made the decision. Lo and behold, not a few minutes later, Ol shows up. She asks about the family seated at her booth, visibly upset. I was up at the server hostess station when she walked in, and before she can say anything else, I tell her exactly what my AM told me to tell her, that she was the one who sat the family at her table, and that they wouldn't be leaving any time soon. I swear, I don't think I have ever seen an adult have such a massive breakdown in public. Ol starts swearing up and down, informing us that she had an awful week, that she had to put her dog down that day, and that this dinner was the only thing she was looking forward to. Right in the front of the entire packed restaurant, she starts crying her eyes out, still shouting angrily about how we made the situation worse. I believe her exact words were, "You can tell AM to go duck herself right now." Soon enough, the AM catches wind of the situation, and now she has to come over and deal with this crying woman. I have to admit, even though Ol can be a bit shrewd and bitchy at times, I did feel bad for her losing her dog. But seriously, duck the AM. She got what she deserved for not listening to me. The next one is titled, "So You Want to Call Me a Cow?" I work in a huge organization. As in, we employ thousands of people across the country. Customer calls up. Let's call her Sour Mary. SM, I am trying to do a transaction under ACCID blah and it is not going through. Me, tappity tap 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 on the keyboard. She verifies account name etc. That account has been closed and that is why it is failing. SM, no, it's not closed. We transact through this account several times a day, large amounts I might add, and it is not closed. Me, according to my system the account is closed. Please verify this with the account owner. SM, look, you're not helpful at all. The account is not closed. I am an authorized user. Clearly there is something you've done wrong. When and why was it closed? Me, ma'am, I'll have to put you through to the accounts area to discuss. SM, can't you tell me why it's closed? Me, I'm sorry, I don't have the access. I only know the account is closed. SM, so I wasted my breath and time even talking to you. Me, well no, you rang to find out why it wasn't working and I gave you the reason. I will put you through to the accounts management team and they can discuss the reasons and when the account was closed. SM, oh, so you're going to palm me off to another useless person. Me, putting you through now as I'm dialing and listening to her rant. Just before I do the last number, I hear her saying, "Sure, put me back in a queue, of course, another long wait, transfer me from one stupid cow to another." So I do. I stop putting her through to the internal and faster transfer number, where I would have introduced and given the account details, and I put her back through the press 1 for a notoriously long wait public line. Oops. The last one is titled, "Come in for my shift? You just suspended me." This happened about 3 years ago while I worked at a large pizza chain as a manager. Background: at the time of this story I was in college coming up on 5 years of service at this company and 4 years of it being management. At our location I was the second longest standing employee with one other manager having 1 more year than me. So it goes to say that we knew how to run the store smoothly and handle shift changeover and scheduling. The old general manager left a lot of this work to us and only stepped in when things didn't add up cash-wise due to someone miscounting. Our general manager, my boss, was relocated due moving, so we gained a new manager from outside our area and different corporate office. Cast, me as me, the general manager and manager in training. It's the middle of a dinner rush on Wednesday and I'm running the line where we make the pizzas. Everyone is moving among and things are going smooth. Then I hear our new general manager from across the floor talking to our manager in training. General manager, "Sure honey, if you want to leave early that shouldn't be a problem. Only problem is it very much is a problem. She is one of 2 closers for the night and I like going home before 2 AM on a school night. I have a 7:35 morning class so no sleeping in, so I walked over." Me, "Hey, sorry to overhear, but did you just say manager I'm training can leave early tonight?" General manager, "Yes, is there a problem?" Me, manager in training is scheduled to be a closer tonight with me to be trained on paperwork and help clean. Did you ask anyone else to take their place? General manager, "No, but that shouldn't be a problem, it's only Wednesday and you can manage it, just leave when you're scheduled to and I can handle what's left in the morning." Me, "Okay boss if you say so." QMC. So the night is ending and me and my one closer are scrambling to get things done. I got the paperwork and daily cash put together and inventory while he cleaned. Right at the stroke of midnight I looked at him and said, "Boss said it's time to go." New general manager said to leave when scheduled, they will handle the rest tomorrow. Needless to say things were not finished. Dishes were piled in the sink, floors weren't fully swept and mopped, and stations were not set up. Come tomorrow morning, I get a phone call from the general manager screaming at me asking why the store was a mess and that the moment I need to come to the store and see him. Well, classes ended and I came into work, on my day off might I add, to see the general manager and manager in training staring me down. Me, what seems to be the problem? Manager in training, you left this store a mess. And you call yourself a manager? General manager, she's right, this is unacceptable. Me, I just did as you told me and left at my scheduled time. At this comment the general manager blew up and screamed some slew about how manager in training can replace me in a heartbeat and that I should have stayed and finished my job. He then proceeded to tell me I'm suspended from work for 2 weeks, and to that I happily said, okay. And walked out as I'm now suspended and not supposed to be at work. Fast forward to Friday night, I normally close Friday and Saturdays, and I get a phone call from manager in training asking where I am. I humbly reminded her I'm suspended and to enjoy covering it alone. Not even 5 minutes later the general manager called me demanding I come work my shift and how he can't believe I'm skipping out. Again I humbly reminded him that I'm suspended on his orders. At this he stammered for a second, then just told me to come in anyway as they have none to cover my shifts. I refused and said I will see him in 2 weeks. I turned in my notice and was never scheduled a shift even when I came back. I come to find out the general manager ended up covering all my shifts, working upwards of 18 to 20 hours a day as the other manager that normally worked with me was on vacation. It's so nice to watch people stew in the mess they made. Thanks for listening.